All set.
Great, thank you. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the December 7th, 2021 Board of Selectmen meeting at 6:30. All selectmen are present. We'll call the meeting to order right at 6:30. That is perfect. First item of business is proposed change to Zoom meetings chat function. So I wanted to share with the board, I had spoken to town council after our last meeting at the office hours. And I had asked him if we were required to utilize the chat feature at our meetings. His response was no, that we offer 2 public comments and the opportunity for the public to raise their hand at any point during a discussion to participate. We talked about that, at an in-person meeting, how the public would be recognized by the chair by coming to the podium and being recognized to speak. The same opportunities are available via Zoom with the raise your hand feature. I'll be honest, I found it extremely distracting and disruptive at our last meeting with trying to monitor the chat as what was going on. And we didn't know the requirements of what needed to be read into record and what didn't. So I had spoken to Jay Montijo, and the only way to turn off the chat feature is it gets turned off as a whole for all meetings for all of Southborough. There's no, you can't pick and choose what meetings to turn it off. And I believe that this is a policy issue for this board to make. Many towns do not use the chat feature. Turning it off, I believe, allows us to have a better organized meeting. I would gladly acknowledge, as we've done before, commenters, to come on and speak. They can raise their hand. We'll bring them over. They can state their name and address as we would do it in an in-person meeting. So my request on this is to get the board's thoughts on this. I will tell you, I would have just turned it off if we could have done it for the Board of Selectmen alone, but obviously it's a policy issue and it would have to be for all. So also, I always worry about Zoom bombs as well. Are we opening the door to that as well? So that being said, we'll just go around the room and get people's thoughts on this. And we'll start with Ms. Malinowski.
I don't have an issue with shutting it off. I think we provide the same capability for people to participate as if we were in the room by raising their hand or doing public comment.
Thank you. Mr. Haley.
Yeah, it's funny, until the last meeting, I didn't realize that. I'm not sure if it had come up in any of our other meetings, and it was, distracting. That's one thing, but from a open meetings, public records perspective, trying to keep track of that is just a mess as far as I'm concerned. And the equivalent would be is if you were at a meeting and there were a bunch of people sort of yelling things out at you, and you'd take control of the meeting if that happens. So I actually think it should be across the board, so that we're not dancing on the head of a pin with open meetings laws and public records and what is and isn't. So I'm totally in support of your proposal.
Thank you, Mr. Stivers.
Yeah, I think the main issue for me is to provide access to the public, and with the hand raise and chairs of meetings being sensitive to taking a look at the hands and giving people an opportunity to speak as may be appropriate during a meeting. Again, as long as you have the opportunity there, even in a more controlled environment, I think that provides the spirit of what we need to do. So I'm okay with turning chat off.
Thank you, Mr. Dennington.
I also agree, and thank you for suggesting this. The last meeting where there was a lot of chat, I just found it hard to concentrate on who was talking at the time because there were so many messages flashing up. And as you pointed out, the raise your hand function is really what should be being used.
Okay, thank you. And so I'll work with Mr. Purple, and we'll get something out so all boards and committees are aware, and we can get this taken care of. So thank you very much for that.
We do have
Go ahead,
a raised hand. Speaking of the point, we do have a raised hand.
Just getting ready to go to public comment too. So can we bring Marguerite over, please? Good evening, Marguerite. Welcome.
Hi. I'm going to be the problem child here. If you're in a room in a meeting, people can see when someone raises their hand, but if a meeting's going on and a person raises their hand and the board isn't able to respond to them, there's no way publicly for anyone to know that a resident has expressed a desire to speak.
Okay, thank you, Marguerite. You know, we're cognizant on it on this board. I know Chelsea's kind of she was the chat and the raised hand kind of keeper for our board. And I don't necessarily think we've ever missed anybody. But thank you, Marguerite. I appreciate that.
Okay,
I don't know if
just
anyone else.
one opposite point of view, that's all. Okay, bye.
Nope, and it's appreciated. Thank you. All right, so that being said, does that change anyone's opinion? I think we're, okay, perfect. So I'll work with Mr. Purple. We'll get something out so everybody's aware and we'll get that taken care of. So thank you very much. Next up is public
Lisa,
comment,
Lisa,
please.
Hey, Lisa,
Sorry,
do you
Mark.
want to vote? Do you want to vote on that since you identified it as a policy issue, or are you fine with the opinions being stated? I'm fine either way.
You know what? We might as well just take a vote, Marty, seeing as, yeah,
All right.
as you discussed it. So
I will move that for the reasons discussed, that all Zoomed public meetings for Southborough boards and committees that the chat function be disabled. Did I get that right?
Yep.
yes.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, roll call. Ms. Malinowski.
Aye.
Mr. Healy.
Aye.
Mr. Stivers.
Aye.
Mr. Dennington.
Aye.
And Ms. Braccio. Aye. Thank you very much. All right, Marty, thank you for that. Next up is public comment. If anyone would like to speak, please raise your hand. You are certainly welcome to. All right, I see no one at this time. Thank you very much. We will move on to scheduled appointments. A is police department recognition of employees. Vanessa, can we please bring, oh, the chief, did we lose him? I saw he was here.
Oh, he's in.
He's in. Oh, perfect. Okay, let me go back. Sorry, chief. I was trying to pay attention to raised hands. So thank you very much for coming. Welcome. I wanted to share with the board, and chief, I don't see any of your officers in the participants. So I just wanted to take a few seconds, chief, and I wanted to share with the board some of the information you were kind enough to share with me, to recognize some of the officers, and you can certainly add, I'll stop after each one, and you can certainly add anything that you might like. So I wanted to share with the board, there was a couple pretty amazing recommendations for the police department in the last couple months. One of them, one in particular, was the fire department was dispatched to a call for a man down, and it went over the radio to police, fire, and multiple officers from the police department responded, as well as a duty group from the fire department. The first responding officers immediately assessed the patient, began CPR, and continued until the arrival of paramedics. Also, throughout this process, they assisted the fire department in getting information, they provided respirations using a bag valve mask without hesitation. And through the great efforts of the officers on duty, including two officers that were on a detail, came in their personal cars to assist as well. The driveway was fairly steep. The officers assisted in bringing this patient down to the ambulance as well. So, and Chief, I'll go to you as well next, but I wanted to make sure that we recognize Sergeant Heath Wittes, Detective Steve Nivert, Officer Jake Woodford, Officer Kevin Landry, Officer Luke Scoroso. I hope I said that right. I apologize if I didn't. Special Officer Dave Hagan, and Dispatcher Kyle DeVincent. So I think there's a huge kudos to them for kind of going over and above, being the first responders in a sense. And I will tell you that this note that went to the police department was on behalf of firefighter Shanahan, which I also thanked, asked Chief Achilles to share our thanks with him as well for sharing what he thought was exemplary work on behalf of the police department. Chief, do you want to add anything to that specific incident? Sorry, Chief, you're muted.
Hi, is that better? Hi, I just, yeah, I'd like to add a few things. First of all, big thank you to Chris Shanahan. Sometimes you hear these calls come over the radio and you're really not sure what the depth of the involvement is. And I knew that this was a serious case. I happened to be monitoring the radio and just amazed. Sergeant Wittes was literally right on scene when the call went out. So I kind of listened to it all take place. But until Chris put it down on paper, you really don't get that big picture of what's happening. So big shout out to him. He recognized it and made us aware of it. And, you know, this is, like I say, when I introduce some of the new officers, this is the great part of the job. And I'll say that as well with the second one coming up. You come in the morning and you read a report like that, and, you know, you really realize why you're in this profession. Just a couple of quick notes. I did start to think it's almost become very routine for police officers now. And I don't know if you remember, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, police officers were routinely recognized when they did the Narcan saves for opiate overdoses. And I just looked in my records, and since 2017, we've done 25 of them. So I just also wanted to recognize that. And in the second incident coming up, you'll see that they used a defibrillator. And just big thank you to the town. I know they passed a capital item this past spring. Our units were about 12 years old. So this is our new unit that we carry in the cruises, and it was put into play. And I guess it really helped everybody on scene when that took place. Also, I don't know if everybody's aware, but part of our 40-hour in-service, we are trained in CPR, defib, and Narcan every year. And the officers, they are out driving around, so often they're the first on scene. And I do notice when we do our in-service, that's something that everybody takes really seriously. So when you're sitting in a class like that, nobody's daydreaming or not paying attention. You have the full focus, because you know it's just how serious it might be. So I just wanted to add those comments. We did invite officers to come in tonight via Zoom, but I kind of got a little smile every time I mentioned the Zoom option. So just great that we're getting it out in the public.
Great. Thank you, Chief. And I'll just briefly touch on the second one. It was Sergeant Michael Wellen, Officer Cameron Kapsky, Officer Jeff Norton, Officer Julia Fontana, and Dispatcher Dave Maida. They had also received, again, a call that came in for an unresponsive male party. And upon the arrival, they evaluated, they performed CPR and administered successful shocks of the AED with very little supervisory guidance. Their actions resulted in the male party regaining a pulse and being transported by the fire department. So again, kudos to all of those officers. We very much appreciate. Sometimes you don't think about when these calls come in that, you know, that they are truly first responders in a whole different respect as well. So many thanks to them. Chief, please share our thanks. I'll kind of go around. I don't know if anybody wants to add anything to that. Marty?
No, other than on the one hand, it's recognition. On the other hand, given the track record, it really doesn't surprise me. So kudos to the department and your individuals, Chief.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sam.
Again, kudos. I think this is part of what makes Southborough a great place to live, is that you've got that kind of support that's trained and ready to help and basically save lives here. So that's critical importance, and we appreciate the hard work and good work that various public safety departments do. Thank you.
Thank you, Sam. Andrew?
I also, like Marty, don't have anything to add to Lisa's comments, other than that I think it's important that we do this periodically so that the officers know how much we appreciate the work that they do.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chief, for coming, and thanks for all your department's work every day.
Thanks.
Wonderful. And actually, I see, Chief, you do have an officer here. Officer Wellen is here. So if we could just bring him over for 2 quick seconds, I'm sure he's heard everybody's thanks, but happy to share it one more time with him.
That's great. Thanks for Mike for coming. Just in closing, I just want to point out, I think it was Sam who pointed out living in a town and getting that type of service. And sometimes you hear about a little bit of red and blue rivalry in the professions. But I must say, in my time in Southborough and long before I got here, on calls, on everything that we're tasked to do together, we work wonderfully. And that's a tradition that preceded me and will be here long after I'm gone. So big shout out to them as well. Great team members.
Great, thank you. Sergeant Wellen, thank you. Thank you for coming tonight. I hope you were able to hear all of our appreciation for the wonderful job that you guys have all done and the lives that you've saved. So we thank you very much for that, and thank you for coming.
Thank you very much for the kind words. Appreciate it.
All right, thank you very much. All right, we're going to move on from there. So again, thank you for attending. Next up is interviews and appointments for the Arpa committee. So I wanted to let the board know that we're leaving the charge for the citizens at large open until Friday. We're going to do one more push. We had another applicant come in this morning. So I think it creates a great opportunity for the 2 spots. We have 3 applicants at this point. Some pretty amazing people have stepped forward wanting to do this. The planning board has brought us Marnie Houlihan, advisory Tim Martell, EDC John Woods, and Capital last night, recommended Joe Palmer and Tony Schoner. So we have a couple options here. We can seat those members tonight. I would ask the board, I know we're meeting next Tuesday with advisory. My goal is, it's been a really long year for all of us for a lot of reasons. And I am hoping that there's going to be nothing that really comes forward that would necessitate a meeting on the 21st. So my question would be to this board, would you be willing to meet at 6:30 on next Tuesday? And then we'll go into the advisory with advisory at 7. At 6:30, we could actually interview and appoint these people. There's a couple consent items we could take care of. And again, my goal is to not to have a meeting on the 21st, because advisory is actually meeting the 22nd, and they're starting some of the discussions with the department heads. So if any members would like to participate in that, we can certainly post a meeting in case there's a quorum, but that's kind of my goal. So we'll open it up to thoughts from the board. I mean, I'm happy with appointing the sitting board members that we currently have and doing the citizens next Tuesday. So we'll start with you, Sam.
Yeah, why don't we do that? Are we going to talk later about the charge? I had a comment on the charge for the committee.
We can.
But I'm fine with appointing now. Might as well do it now and have less to do next Tuesday, which I'm fine with appointing and interviewing next Tuesday as well.
Okay. Andrew?
I just muted myself and then I agree with what Sam suggested, and I'm willing to spend, meet even earlier if you want on next Tuesday in the interest of trying to avoid a meeting on the 21st. And I don't know, just one thing to consider is, what time is the joint meeting with advisory?
7 o'clock.
7 o'clock. Okay, so does that, see, I don't know how, if we go through this agenda tonight and there's some other things that require a little bit of follow-up, will we have a little bit of time, maybe even after the joint meeting with advisory, if we had a couple other items to, what is
Okay,
Marty doing
Marty's
here?
saying 6. I mean, we can certainly see where we're at the end of the meeting, Andrew, and we can certainly, decide if we can just set
Sounds good.
6. And if we get done early, then we get done early, and because it's going to be 2 separate meeting rooms, so that there's no disruption in people coming in and out. So is everybody good with 6 o'clock on Tuesday, the 14th? Chelsea? Yeah, Sam? Okay, so why don't we do that? And we'll put anything that we could need to squeak on the agenda for that. So Andrew, you're fine with sitting the boards and committee members tonight and doing the interviews and appointing the 2 citizens at large on Tuesday?
Yes.
Okay, Perfect. Chelsea?
I'm good with that as well. And just want to thank the volunteers from the current boards and committees who threw their hat in the ring for this one. Much appreciated.
Okay, Marty?
Yep, I'm fine. And Sam, I only thought about something with the charge. Is it minor? Because if it's not, it's
Yeah.
not really not part of the.
Yeah, no, actually, Marty, I just looked and saw the thing I was interested in had been changed in the packet one, so I'm okay with the charge.
Okay. And otherwise, I'm fine with the approach, appointing tonight and appointing again on, what would that be, the 14th?
14th. Okay, perfect. So then do we have a motion to appoint Marty Houlihan, Planning Board Rep, Tim Martell, Advisory Rep, John Wood, EDC Rep, Joe Palmer, Capital Planning Rep, Tony Schoner, Capital Planning Rep. Let's see, with a June 30, 22 expiration date.
So moved.
So move.
Okay, okay, second?
Second, whatever.
Thank you, Sam. Much appreciated. Roll call. Mr. Healy,
Aye.
Mr. Stivers,
Aye.
Mr. Dennington,
Aye.
Ms. Malinowski,
Aye.
Ms. Braccio, aye. Thank you very much. Those are all set. Next up is Chairman's Report. Just wanted to give a quick update on the Gobble Wobble. There was 913 participated, which was pretty incredible. It was pretty nice to see all the people. I see Mr. Healy's beautiful bride actually took her division. So with a very extraordinary
Don't identify
times.
the division because I'll get in trouble.
I'm not. I'm leaving it at that. So anyway, it was wonderful to see. It was wonderful to see such a great turnout. There were people showing up, looking to register that morning as well. So absolutely fabulous. So kudos to the Friends of Recreation, the Recreation Department. It went off absolutely without a hitch. And I have to say the times were pretty astonishing. Some of the first runners that came over it was something. So thank you to them. Next up for me is office hours. Because we're meeting on the 14th, we're going to push off the December office hours just till January. And so it was Sam and I believe Chelsea. In December, you guys will sit for our January office hours. And that's it from me. Next up is Noise Bylaw Committee update. Mr. Stivers, I believe that's you.
Yep, it was me, thanks. Just a quick update to let folks know that the Noise Bylaw Committee has now held several meetings. They're up and running. Good discussion about other town bylaws and key issues to be addressed, such as hours, noise level limitations and measurement and so forth. And I think as we had hoped, there is a wide range of views represented on the committee. So it's been, again, interesting conversation so far. And they're working on a plan to solicit some public input as required by the charge. So again, the message is they're off and running and pushing hard to get something for consideration at the spring town meeting. So encourage them to keep going quickly and doing a great job so far. Thanks.
Great. Thank you, Sam. Much appreciated. Mr. Purple, Town Administrator's Report. Oh, sorry. Excuse me, Marty, go ahead.
Yeah, this is something that post dated or post time, whatever the right term is, the posting of the agenda. But on Saturday night, I don't know if other folks had the opportunity to go to there was an open house for the new little apothecary artisans shop in downtown Southborough. And it has many virtues, not the least of which is it's walking distance from my house. And it was a great event. Incredibly talented people, great energy. And it was, there were a number of people in conversations who noted that with that new shop and with the downtown boutique, the little consignment boutique, that it was a great feel on a Saturday night in downtown Southborough to have people walking around and a shop open. And again, they're bringing some great energy and are going to be having events like this and showcasing their work and other artists. And it was a great way to spend some time on a Saturday night. So kudos to them.
That's great, Marty. Thank you. And I'll add on that there were a lot of successful in the last couple of weeks, a lot of successful little pop-ups that happened. There was another art group at the, with jewelry and crafts and arts and crafts. It was coordinated, I believe, through the Arts Council at the Knights of Columbus this weekend. The Boy Scouts did their annual shop. I believe it was St. Mark's had also done their annual bazaar. So there's been a lot going on in town, which is great. It's great to see the downtown busy and lots of good things going on. So thank you for Marty for sharing that. That's great. All right, Mr. Purple, Town Administrator's report.
So I don't have anything specifically this evening. I think a lot of the things that have been going on are really reflected in some of the consent agenda items. Finance team's been doing budget meetings for the past week and a half. We'll be wrapping those up this week, leading up to the meeting, joint meeting with advisory on Tuesday. I think that's really about it. Oh, the only other issue is beginning negotiations with fire, hopefully next week. And on the heels of that will be DPW. We've received the notice from the union with the interest to come to the table. So that'll be following on the heels of that. And I'm sure the other two right behind. So we've really got to try and get things wrapped up probably sometime in the next 10 weeks. So that's really going to dominate the majority of my time with the exception of the budget and the warrant.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Purple. Appreciate it. Next up, consent agenda. There's a lot of items. I'm sure there's going to be some holds. So do we have any holds for A? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. B,
Yes.
C,
Yes.
D,
Yes.
E,
Yes.
okay, F, okay, G, H, I'll hold H. Okay, Marty, H2, got it. Okay. I'll hold that as well. J, K,
Hold.
okay, and I was waiting for that one to come. L
Hold.
and M, I'm gonna hold that. So basically, do we have a motion to accept consent agenda items F, G, and J?
So moved.
Second,
Is there a thank you, Sam. We'll go round table. Ms. Malinowski,
Aye.
Mr. Healy,
Aye.
Mr. Stivers,
aye.
Mr. Dennington.
Aye.
All right, and Ms. Braccio is an aye. Okay, we're going to go back to item A. Why don't we start with October 26th? And then I know I screwed it up last meeting, so let's just stick to one set of minutes first. So Chelsea, did you have anything on October 26th?
Yeah. Just line 48. So we were talking about the reserve fund transfers, and it said that there was a reserve fund transfer for the printer, but it actually hasn't been requested yet. So it should say the request for the printer from for Board of Health is currently in IT's budget and needs to, and the request hasn't been done yet. So sorry, let me rephrase it. The printer for Board of Health is currently in the IT budget and the reserve fund request has not been requested.
Okay, was that it, Chelsea, on those minutes?
Yeah.
Okay. Andrew, do you have anything on that one? 26th? No.
I
Sam,
was
no?
not at that meeting, so no.
Okay. Marty, anything? Oh, go ahead.
I don't, but I just pulled up and looked at the attendees, and Ms. Houlihan is now one of the attendees, and I just want to make sure she doesn't think that we have yet to act on the appointments. Marty may just be interested in what else is coming, but I don't want to hold her up if she thinks that the ARPA stuff hasn't been addressed yet.
Okay, much appreciated. Marnie, you're all set. We appointed you as the planning board rep to that. So as Mr. Healy said, if that was, you're welcome obviously to stay, but if you have other things to do, then you are all set for the night. Thank you. All right, Marty, thank you very much. So I had nothing on the 26th. So do we have a motion to approve the October 26, 2021 minutes as amended? Sorry.
So move.
Great.
Second.
Second. Thank you. Roll call, Ms. Malinowski,
Aye.
Mr. Healy,
Aye.
Mr. Stivers,
Aye.
Mr. Dennington,
I will abstain on the 26th because I was not.
Perfect. And Ms. Braccio, aye. Great. Thank you very much. All right, Ms. Malinowski, November 16th.
I actually didn't have an issue with any of those.
Okay. Mr. Stivers?
Nope.
Mr. Dennington?
Wow.
I did. I have one. Go ahead, Andrew.
On line 337.
Yep.
There is
That's
not
mine
a
too.
there is not a Limerick Road in Southborough. But there is a Lynbrook Road. Lynnbrook, right?
Okay. Was that it, Andrew? Thank you.
That's
Marty,
it.
anything? Okay. And Andrew, that was mine too. So I will just say this to Bridget on a 445 line minutes to have the spelling of a street that you probably couldn't hear very clearly. Outstanding. Absolutely outstanding, Bridget. So thank you very much. That being said, do we have a motion to accept November 16th, 2021 minutes as amended?
So
So
moved.
move.
Thank you. Is
Second.
there a second? Great. Thank you, Sam. All right, Ms. Malinowski,
Aye.
Mr. Healy,
Aye.
Mr. Dennington,
Aye.
Mr. Stivers,
Aye.
and Ms. Braccio. Aye. Thank you very much. Next up, appoint Anthony Schoner as Associate Member of Trails Committee. Ms. Malinowski, that was your hold?
Yes, so I have the same comments for B and C.
Okay.
And thank you for the two gentlemen for stepping forward to apply for this. I was one of the ones that was not in support of having alternate members, so I would just like to vote no on this, but nothing against these two gentlemen. I wish you luck with the position. And hopefully at some point I'll come around to supporting the idea.
Okay. Thank you, Chelsea. Do we have I'm in the same boat as you, Chelsea, on this one, so I'll add that. Do we have a motion to appoint Anthony Schoner as Associate Member of Trails Committee ending 6/30/22 and appoint William Warren as Associate Member of Trails Committee ending 6/30/22?
So move.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Roll call vote. Ms. Malinowski,
No,
Mr. Healy,
Aye.
Mr. Stivers,
Aye.
Mr. Dennington,
Aye.
and Ms. Braccio, no, as well. Thank you very much. That passes. Approved calendar 2020 license renewals. D, Ms. Malinowski.
yes, so as you all know, we have a new food and housing inspector who comes from the shared service grant of the Greater Boroughs. And she has been very diligent in working through all of the updates for the inspections. And she has not completed all of her inspections yet. So I would like to just hold the common vic licenses until she completes that. And I will be touching base with her the end of this week to make sure that we can hopefully do that for Tuesday. So that's my goal. I just would rather kind of do it all as a package deal.
Okay, I'm fine with that. Anyone have any exception to that?
So are we going to
Okay.
vote on the others, just not the common vic, or hold everything until next
I
week?
think we should probably hold everything, Sam, just to keep consistency.
Okay, and nobody's going to be put out in any significant way by delaying for a week here, as far as we know. Okay.
No, because Mark, aren't the licenses through 12/31 anyway?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. So, and you know what? And normally we're working right up until the end, but everything's been paid, everything's all set. So once we get this issue taken care of, then you can do just one vote to do them all.
Okay, so we'll put that on for consent on the 14th. Great,
Thank
thank you. E, Ms. Malinowski.
Yeah, I had a comment about this because in the printed packet, it came out black and white. So I just wanted to make sure that we update it somewhere on the town website so that we can see the colors related to the precinct changes. So I just wanted to point that out to make sure that we update that somewhere so that it's visible, or maybe when we post the packet for these meeting minutes that we include a color version of this.
Okay, Chelsea, I think we can do both. I'm sure Mr. Haggerty would be happy to, if he hasn't already. I know I looked, so I'm sure he would be happy to do something. And I'll just offer one reminder on this too. When we do take the vote on this, this does have to be signed. So everyone is going to have to make sure they stop up at the townhouse to sign this. He needs the letter for the local elections district review commission. So that being said, with that noted, do we have a motion to approve changes to the precinct boundaries for precinct 1 and precinct 2?
So
I'm sorry.
moved.
Second.
Okay, thank you. Roll call, Ms. Malinowski,
Aye.
Mr. Healy,
Aye.
Mr. Dennington,
Aye.
Mr. Stivers,
Aye.
and Ms. Brascio. Aye. Thank you very much. Next up is I held H. I think Marty held H as well. So Marty, I will defer to you first. We're probably going to do the same thing. So.
You may recall that, I don't remember which meeting it was, but that I am now the Board of Selectmen representative to Shopsy. And so I went to my first meeting on Monday morning, and as Dorianne was resigning from being the Shopsy representative to CPC, she nominated me to be the Shopsy representative to CPC. I checked with Mark beforehand. I knew it was coming. And there's actually no prohibition to a Board of Selectmen member being a different committee's designee. We, the Board of Selectmen, couldn't designate me. So, but I just wanted to let folks know, and if just to make sure nobody else on the board has an issue with it. I don't have an issue with it. Again, I'd be Shopsy's representatives, but that doesn't mean I don't remember that I'm a member of the Board of Selectmen. But again, I don't have an issue with it. There's no legal prohibition to my doing it, but I wanted to make you all aware of it.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for doing it. Don't you love just being, picked to do things? I love to do that.
Yeah, I forgot to take a step back. That's what happened.
All right. So, I actually held H and I. We'll take care of both of those at the same time. Actually, I wanted to thank Ms. Jasinski for her time on CPC and Mr. Nixon for his time on the Recreation Commission as well. They both currently serve on the personnel board, so we're not losing them fully. As well as Mr. Healy said, Ms. Jasinski is also on Shopsy and Mr. Nixon is also on Gulf. So we're not actually officially losing them. I think they just have enough on their plate at this time. So that being said, do we have a motion to accept the resignation of Dorian Jasinski from CPC Shopsy Rep and accept the resignation of David Nixon from Recreation Commission?
So move.
Thank you. Do we have a second? Thank you. Roll call, Ms. Malinowski.
Aye.
Thank you. Mr. Healy?
Aye.
Mr. Stivers?
Aye.
Mr. Dennington?
Aye.
Ms. Brascio, aye. Thank you very much. That brings us down to K. Chelsea, did you hold that because you have to recuse from the vote? Okay,
Yes.
Mr. Healy, are you in the same, if that's a bond item?
Yeah, I let I don't know if I let Mark know, but I let Brian Valentine know. Yeah, I can't participate.
That's fine. So we'll recuse you both from that vote. And do we have a motion to approve the bans for fire truck and Fin School boiler?
So move.
Thank you. Do we have a second? Andrew?
Second.
Thank you. Roll call. Mr. Stivers,
Aye.
Mr. Dennington,
Aye.
Ms. Brascio, aye with 2 recusals. Thank you very much. Next up is L, Ms. Malinowski.
Yes, thank you. So this is on the EEA grant that was just awarded. And I had a few questions related to the match. So if you remember, I had dug into the prior grants match and had some concerns coming out of that. So in terms of the in-kind services for the DPW, the town planner, the assessor, and the administration, I assume that won't create any issue for those departments and that they've been made aware of those in-kind contributions, whether it be in FY22 or FY23. But for the CPC funding piece, it could be requested for the FY23 budget. I assume that the CPC requests have already been made, and I wasn't sure how that would be requested as it relates to a grant, or is that kind of how that's going to work? I didn't know if it was going to be like a CPC article that we needed to apply for, and what specifically related to housing would we be applying for?
Mr. Purple, do you have any comments on that?
So my only, I have a comment and a suggestion. So my comment is that I did speak with Marika earlier this week as part of our budget hearings. She was in the budget hearing, and I'd asked the question, and the local match, my understanding from her is that this is prospective. I don't know that any of this is a done deal, that people have agreed and that requests have been made for the funding. But I just saw her hand go up. So my suggestion was going to be, Claire Reynolds is here, and Claire helped to put this together, and she may have some better information that she can offer in place of me just stumbling.
Perfect. Vanessa, can we bring Claire over, please? Good evening, Claire. Welcome for being here. Thank you for coming. And it's actually perfectly timed that you were here. So I'm sure you heard Chelsea's question. Oh, did I lose you? Claire, are you here? Claire, you're muted if you're here.
Thank you. My
There you are.
apologies.
No, you're
one of
fine.
the
Welcome,
things-
Claire.
Thanks, Mark. Perfect timing. One of the things was a requirement for the grant was where the match was going to come from. So what had been done ahead of time was Mark and I talked about a recommendation of where the matches would come from. So that was formalized in a memo that was sent to Kurt Gartner, who is the Director of the Energy and Environmental Affairs. That memo exists, and I don't know what other questions maybe I'm not clear on.
Thanks, Claire. So I'm specifically asking about the $3,000 match that's listed as CPC funding housing could be requested for FY23 budget. If there's something that needs to be in the FY23 budget for this match, is it?
At the time that the grant was put together, the FY23 budget was even thought about. So it's the forward planning that has to be done in order to support what the town wants to do with accepting the money from this grant. We're now at the point of putting together the budgets, and this is something that has to be considered.
But which budget is the $3,000 coming from for FY23 for this match portion?
There were, there were three different budgets. Excuse me. There were three different buckets, so to speak. So on a $50,000 grant, the match was $12,500, and it was split in three different pockets. And there's consulting money in several of the different budget line items for different departments, where the different departments could support the benefit that the town would be getting from this grant.
Okay, so I'm not following, and I understand that you put the grant together, Claire, but I'm not sure that you maybe could answer my question, seeing as you're probably not involved with the individual budgets that are going through review right now. So I think maybe I need to work with either the coordinator or the EDC to figure out kind of where these monies are coming from. I mean, the $7,500, is that assumed to be part of the 10,000 that's historically been in the consulting budget for EDC in the past? So
The best way to clarify this is from the emails that I had initially sent to Mark in preparation for sending the grant to approval, and his following email that he sent to the director of the economic, the environmental and energy affairs. All of this work was done ahead of time. So there was nothing that.
I understand, but it seems like there's maybe a disconnect between what was applied for the grant and what needs to be budgeted for FY23 to cover the in-kind portion of this. That's what I'm concerned about. That we have the appropriate budget, having a grant not being able to fund the in-kind presents a problem. So I would like to see where in the FY23 budgets that these items are coming out of. And Claire, you may not, seeing as you put the grant together in May, you may not have that information for the FY23 budgets if you're not involved with those individual budgets that they'll be coming out of. So I think I can draft a letter to send, or a memo, an email to Mr. Purple and Marika to maybe outline where those monies are supposed to be allocated from.
I guess
okay,
I would ask the
so-
question as well. Excuse me, Claire, 1 second.
Can I answer that question first, Lisa? All of this was done prior to sending in the request in May to submit the grant. It was all documented. Mark and I have the information. At the time, nobody was doing budgeting for 23. So
I understand,
what has
but
to
we were
be done
doing it now. We're doing
what
it
has
now.
to be done now is the individual departments. If the town wants to go ahead and pursue grants, then it has to be put in ahead of time that there's going to be matching funds that has to be provided from different departments. And if the different departments don't agree with it, well, then the town ought to think about how a grant's going to get funded.
Thanks, Claire.
So I would just ask 1 second, Mark. Chelsea, I would just ask, I mean, I understand asking Marika on the 7,500, but I think the bigger question, and Mr. Healy, now this is you from CPC, I mean, was CPC even asked? We have no control over, is this a warrant article that needs to be brought forward? I mean, how would this be funded through CPC, and has the question even been asked? So Marty, I can toss that to you to ask at the potentially next CPC meeting, or even reach out to the chair now. And just to make sure, I understand, Chelsea, where you're going, to make sure that we've covered the bases within the 23 budget to pay these. So Mark, go ahead.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm not sure I can have much more clarity. I mean, I think that Ms. Reynolds and Ms. Malinowski are just talking past each other from different points in the process, because when the grant was put together, there were areas that were identified which could be used as the in-kind, the in-kind match, the matches and the funds. But those haven't been, now that the grant is received, and again, a lot of these are 23 budget. Yes, I fully agree. We hadn't even started 22. We weren't doing the 23 budget. So now those items, if the board wants to go forward with this, we've got to put this in place, and especially the town consulting funding in the 23 budget. When the board is taking a look at budgets and considering cuts, you need to understand that, we don't want to do anything if we're going to jeopardize potential match money that's sitting in a budget that just needs to be recognized. So hopefully that provides a little. So I think Ms. Reynolds and Ms. Malinowski are both correct. It's just that, Ms. Reynolds was looking at it from applying for the grant. And now Ms. Malinowski is looking at, okay, we've got the grant. How do we put this all together? And where do we go from here?
Sorry, go ahead, Marty.
Yeah, it just strikes me that this is a glitch in the grant process, because there's no way that in May of 2021 that the town or Ms. Reynolds or otherwise could have committed to the specific matches. It sounds to me like what you have to do in the grant is identify the potential matches. We've gotten the grant based on those potential matches. So now the town's decision through, it sounds like a bunch of different mechanisms, CPC for $3,000 or so, which is I think a budget article, the regular town meeting funding for the $7,500, and whether or not the town is willing to expend those funds totaling $12,500 in order to reap the benefits of the $37,500 grant. It just sounds again like there's a glitch in the grant process that creates this cognitive dissonance in the timing for it. So did I sort of in a very clumsy way describe that accurately, Mark?
No, I think you did well with that. I mean, look, you've got an application process that crossed 2 fiscal years. You've got a grant that, if fully executed, is going to cross 2 fiscal years. So, it does make it a little bit more convoluted, to Ms. Malinowski's point of, well, you're looking for 23 funding for some of the actual dollar matches. Yeah, we're going to have to put in for those. And if one of those falls through, we're going to have to pivot, to figure out how that's going to be filled, either with additional in-kind services or some other funding source.
I guess, Mark, my only question for you and/or for Claire is that obviously much of this can't be done until our annual town meeting. Are we in danger of losing the grant money if we don't act before then? Or do we even know?
I don't know the answer to that as to, we do have the contract. I'd have to take a look and see when it has to be signed by. I know obviously that no money can be expended until the contract is signed. So I'd have to take a look at the dates and see if we can hold on to it. And, you're essentially suggesting potentially, another 6 months, assuming, let's say, town meeting gets pushed to May. So yeah, I'll take a look at the dates and see if there's any issues, but the contract performance needs to be completed by June 30 of 23.
So does it make sense then, Mark, while you're looking to do that, is it going to affect anything if we accept this on our meeting on the 14th? Chelsea, would that give you a better comfort level of?
Yeah, I want to make sure, so before we even get to town meeting, I want to make sure it's in the proposed FY23 budgets.
Yeah.
If we haven't put any, like if CPC doesn't know that they're supposed to do anything, then we have a problem before we even get there. So yes, I think that will, I don't know when CPC is meeting again, but hopefully, we can reach out to CPC and get an answer from them. Yes. And then my second question is, so that was related to the in-kind. My second question is, once we approve this, what's the process moving forward? And, is there anything else related to the project management of this outside of the in-kind that's listed out here? And is EDC taking the lead, and what's their plan with this project?
Okay, so Claire has her hand raised. Andrew, I see you have yours as well. We'll go to you second, Andrew. Claire?
Thank you. Folks, I thought from every single meeting that I have seen that the town is interested in being able to get as many grants as they have. I'm not exactly sure that everybody's had a chance to read the message that was sent out last day about what Gary Holmes had said in terms of Route 9 and why the town is not going to be able to develop anything if they don't have the proper infrastructure in place. Here's the thing. This is divided up into two parts. So for the current budget year, for 2022, the match isn't exactly what everybody is looking at. It's a reduced amount. If the town cannot support that match money, which is 25% of about $12,000, then do we really want to risk getting or throwing the grant away? I think I'm
And
missing
Claire,
something here.
if I can just interject here, I don't think anyone is saying that we don't want to proceed with the grant. We just want to make sure that we have the money to fund the in-kind so that we're not in a position where we can't fund it. So
And
that
this
was
is
the
why
genesis
I
of my
had
question.
originally-
It's not, excuse me. It was not to not accept the grant. I just want to make sure we have all of everything dotted off so that we can move forward with it. So I appreciate your comments, but the direction I was going was not to accept the grant.
I just would think that between now and the end of the fiscal year, that the town people who decide this would be able to come up with the minimal 25% match. That's all I can say.
So Claire, I don't think anybody is saying that we don't support looking for grants and want to utilize grants. I think there's just a couple questions that are looking to be answered. I mean, I fully support, putting this on, excuse me, one second, Claire. I think the board is pretty clear that we want to put it on the agenda for our next meeting next Tuesday and just get some answers to some questions. And I think it's just a due diligence part, Claire. I don't think it has anything to do with not wanting to accept the grant and are not grateful, that we were able to get the grant. So I'm just going to go to Andrew quick, Claire, and I'll come back to you. Go ahead, Andrew.
Sure. So Mark, when you said that, when the town put in for the grant, that the delineation of what buckets the local match would come in was prospective, did you mean by that obviously it's prospective because you crossed a fiscal year, but that it could be changed a little bit, that the town will know that, the state will know that the town will match this amount of money, but that there's some flexibility about what bucket it comes out of?
Yeah, I think, you need to give the state or whoever is offering the grant some level of assurance that if they require a match, that you can do it.
So I just wanted to, the one piece of it that I had a question about is the CPC funding, right? Because I was just, while we were here, I Googled the annual warrant for the last annual meeting, right? So the CPC does it have an actual dedicated budget, or there's just individual articles that are voted on? So if it's only $3,000, could instead we could commit that, the EDC would, since the EDC brought it forward, that there would be $3,000 in the EDC's budget to contribute to the local match for this grant. There would seem to be more of a match if it came from the EDC than the CPC.
Well, and I'm not even sure if that's going to be a warrant article, because you do have CPC votes on the books that CPC funded, or provided funding for affordable housing. And basically, Shopsy can go back to CPC and make a request to use some of that funding for a project. And CPC would then approve the money. And I know that there's a question, from Shopsy's point of view as to whether they should have to go back to CPC to get the approvals on a project basis, or whether all of that money should be available to CPC. But I do think that avenue is available without town meeting if in fact the potential use fits within the four corners of that article. So that may be something that could be done with existing funding and not have to be another CPC request.
Two things for that, Mark. One is, I don't believe Shopsy has the authority to request funds. I think that would have to come from the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. One, and two, I think the guidelines for affordable housing are fairly clear. And if we're talking about wastewater, I think we just need to be able to make a pretty sturdy case that, that the use of that ties into the requirements of CPC for affordable housing. So that's my only concern on that. And again, Andrew, I agree with you. If there's another avenue to do it that makes it a heck of a lot easier, then that's probably the path we should look at.
Yeah, I mean, I
I'm just saying,
remember.
yeah, like I said, I'm just saying that I think you can make a case, but it's worth exploring rather than creating a new article and assigning new funds and everything to it.
Go ahead, Marty.
Yeah, I just think, Claire and the folks you work with at EDC, it seems like they did a terrific job getting this grant. And in some respects, their job, other than hopefully implementing the grant, in terms of the funding, is over by having the discussions at the front end that they had with representatives of the town. It just seems to me, and I think this might be part of Claire's frustration, it seems to be this is now the town's problem, because we've got a grant sitting there, and we, not Claire, not really the EDC, but we, the town, have to come up with, and I think, Chelsea, this was your point, we have to come up with to borrow Claire's term, who borrowed my term, we have to come up with the appropriate buckets to identify and make the determination about whether or not we're going to come up with it sounds like in the short term, it might be only $2,000 or $3,000, and in the longer term, 12.5. But it seems to me, Mark, in a lot of respects, I think this falls on you to come back to us and say, these are the mechanisms I recommend that we use to fund this first shorthand, $2,000 or $3,000 for FY22, and then finishing it up to 12.5 that bleeds over to FY23. Isn't that the right? I think you're nodding, Mark. So hopefully that means you agree with me. It seems to me that's the way forward. And Claire, we're not putting something back on you. You guys have done your job. You got us the grant. Now we got to figure out if there's a way for the town to match the funds so we enjoy the benefits of the grant.
Thanks, Marty.
So again, I think, Mark, you've got some marching orders before the 14th. So, okay, so I'm actually good with holding this till the 14th and potentially having a better path. Claire, and again, that this is, I don't think anybody on this board wants to say no to the grant. It's just, we have to make sure all the pieces fit and we do our due diligence on it. I think that's what Chelsea was trying to say. So thank you for that. Thank you for.
Lisa, it doesn't have anything to do with me. I wrote the grant. I got the town got the grant.
I get it. That's why I'm thanking you. I get it. That's why I'm thanking you, but I don't want you to feel discouraged. So that's why I'm saying what I'm saying. So that's it. Thank you very much, Claire. All right. Next up, we'll hold that till the 12/14. See, Andrew, 6 o'clock was good on the 14th. So next up is I held the award of the golf management RFP. I just wanted to toss this to Mark quick, because I think there's a couple things in here that if the public may or may not delve into the packet, but I think it's some real exciting things within this contract. So Mark, I will just toss this to you briefly before we accept.
Okay, thank you. So you got a quick memo earlier today, and I apologize for the lateness of it. The bids were due at noontime on Friday. And as of noontime on Friday, we only had one bidder, which was New England Golf, which is the current management company for Southborough Golf Club. Also has been managing it since it was St. Mark's property. So a total of, they've been with the property for 16 years. We did receive another bid almost 4 hours late. I had a nice conversation with the gentleman. It's a company out of Vegas So we had a conversation, and he fully understood that he wasn't, that it wasn't timely and could not be considered. But, when this contract is renewed, I will likely at least have another player, hopefully, that will want to be involved. The contract that we're looking at is a 5-year contract. The board has the possibility of 2 one-year extensions. I think the improvements that we've made to the course have made the course very attractive. You could see that in the information I sent out earlier. We got the November revenues, and for calendar year 21 for this season, the golf course had gross revenues of over $517,000. They've never had that much. This has really been, it's been a good year. We've made some nice improvements. The brand new putting green is going to be all set to go for the spring of 22. The hitting cages will be all set to go for 22. It's really, shaped up nice. And I think it's come back to what we promised we would do when we had to move that clubhouse as part of the public safety project, is getting the course back up on its feet so that it could either succeed or fall apart all on its own. But it had nothing to do with the fact that we didn't put the effort in. So everything looks nice, and I appreciate the CPC funding. Back to the contract. So the one piece of the contract in the bid from New England Golf is, and you have this information, they have proposed an increase in their annual fee so that they would be providing us, right now it is 10% of gross revenue. And given this year, it was slightly over $51,000, almost 52. That comes back to the town. Again, that goes into a revolving fund, can only be spent on the golf course, can only be put back into the course. And we have not spent anything out of that revolving fund yet. If we were at the proposer is recommending a contract that increasing the 10 to the 12%, up to $550,000 in gross revenue. Anything over 550 in gross revenue, the town would receive an annual fee of 20%. And so it's a nice increase from where we are now. If the 12% was in play this year, the 51.7 would have turned into almost $62,000. So a little bit better. And I did have a brief conversation with Mr. Harrison. He is excited for next season and hopes the town is excited as well. And looks forward to moving forward with this should the board award the contract to New England Golf this evening. You're muted.
Sorry. I know. Thank you. So thank you. I just thought it was important for anybody that may have been listening in to know that the contract went out and it came in with an increase. So that's a great thing. So that being said, we have a motion to award the golf management contract to New England Golf Corporation, subject to the successful negotiation of a contract. Go ahead, Sam.
Question, Lisa. Mark, just to be clear, Mark, we're no longer under the exclusion of the first 200,000.
No, that was a 1 year deal in kind of that transition season that we had. Yep. No, that deal is going away.
And are there any other issues relative to differences between the expected contract versus the current contract? Anything significant that they're looking for that would be different from our current contract?
There's been nothing that's indicated, and I can have those conversations with Mr. Harrison, but I don't think there's no changes that I'm aware of any significance from what we currently have to what we'll put in place.
Is there any conversation around their likelihood or expectation or commitment to investing in some irrigation capacity for the course?
I think it's I will say a mutual consideration, something that, that the board, would need to consider with some of I don't want to say the revenue sharing agreement, but with the annual fee coming back, that goes into the revolving fund that can only be spent on golf. I think that, we could look to commit some funds and everything to that. Bonding rates are very good, and we can take a look at doing something like that. It's very difficult to think that we wouldn't do anything like that when you took a look at what the course looked like this year, given the amount of rain we had. Normally everything dries out and the fairways all start to dry out, and it stayed really green all year. And I think that really helped with play. So, so I think we need to to take a look at that, whether, and part of it is investigating, I think, putting a well on the property.
Yeah.
Because if you were looking to fund irrigation with MWRA water rates,
Yeah.
that's going to be
Couldn't
an
do it.
expensive operation.
Couldn't do it. But again, I think that, again, I'm in favor of continuing with the current manager here, but I just want to be sure there's nothing sort of in the works that would somehow not allow us to consider things like irrigation and so forth. If you'd had conversations with them, if they've said that, no, we're not interested in that, then that would give me some pause in terms of voting for the contract. But it sounds like we're on the same path there. And it is in our mutual interest to increase the number of rounds and make more money for everybody. So
yeah, we've
Okay.
had a lot of there's been a lot of the 9-hole courses, the par threes and that have closed in the
Yeah.
area, and it's become a real attractive option.
Okay.
And I think the concern was that once the pandemic, or at least the part of the pandemic that kept us inside, really allowed people to get out and play golf, because it really was the one thing you could do and go outside and do. Okay, after 2020, we're going to see things tail off. They didn't expect, and I didn't expect, I'm not sure anyone did, this level of play and this level of revenue they've seen. And so
Yeah.
I think it's great to build off of. And I know they're looking at, expanding and doing some junior programs and that with the new putting green area and the hitting cages. And I think there's a bevy of potential revenue sources that have not been tapped yet, and the management company working with the golf committee to bring those to fruition.
Good.
All right, thank you, Sam.
feedback
Anything else?
Yeah,
Sorry,
did you
go ahead.
get feedback from the golf committee on this?
I did not get feedback from the committee yet, on this. I'm happy. I mean, this happened, really fairly quickly in order to make this happen. It's one bid. The golf committee is just started to work with the management company and talk about some things. I know there's been a couple of issues that residents have brought forward to look at some additional netting along Lattisquama
Yeah.
to try to provide some additional, protection to the residential homes on the other side of the street.
Yeah.
I think that, we do have money in the revolving fund that can only be spent back on the course. So
And
once,
again, I'm
Yeah.
fine with moving ahead. I guess I'm a little disappointed that we haven't involved the golf committee at this point in the process. I'd be interested. I expect that they will be supportive, but I would hope that they'd be early in this. So that does it for me, Lisa. Thanks.
yeah, I have been, I do want one other thing. I have been making sure
Right,
that.
30 seconds.
What's that?
You're ruining my time. 30 seconds.
Sorry.
I'm already over here.
Golf
No, go
committee I've been keeping them in the loop in terms of all of the reports and the financial management things we've received from the management company. So I'll continue to blossom that relationship, Sam.
Good.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Go ahead. Nope, go ahead, Sam. If you had something else, go ahead.
I'm done. Thanks.
Okay, so do we have a motion to award the golf management RFP to New England Golf Corporation, subject to successful negotiation of a contract?
So move.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. All right, Ms. Malinowski,
Aye.
Mr. Healy,
I'm scared to say anything but I really quickly.
30 seconds. Mr. Stivers,
Aye.
perfect, Sam. Thank you. Mr. Dennington,
Aye.
Ms. Brascio, aye. Great. Thank you very much. That was the longest consent agenda. Next up, just discussion of the pay rate for recording clerk. Sorry. I had broached this subject with the board briefly in the past, and I just wanted to take a few minutes or longer if need be. We had talked about the inequity of minute takers and some suggestions that I'm hoping that the board would consider. Vanessa and I have been looking into this, and we're just looking for some final clarification so we can bring some form of policy or to create a draft policy for review at a forthcoming meeting. I had suggested in the past to the board that we only allow permitting boards, executive boards being the select board, and finance boards being advisory to be the only boards allowed to utilize paid minute takers. I went back. I know everybody would like to have them, but I went back. I know there's currently 3, maybe 4. I'm not 100% sure. And if you figure 12 meetings a year at $150 a year, that's $1,800 for minute takers. And I know there's plenty of boards and committees that would like to have one that, are currently taking minutes. A lot of the boards and committees are switching out. So that's just for consideration. And then the second piece is we had talked about an equitable pay scale. And in the past, it's always been a flat fee of 150. And I know we've seen some variation in meetings. It could be anywhere from an hour to, our last meeting was 5 hours, which is a prime example. So Vanessa and I had talked about proposing like a flat rate based on meeting length, not based on, obviously, if you had a 4-hour meeting, they're going to be taking notes, but then they've got to compile the notes into an actual draft document. And as we saw tonight, the 455-line document. So we were looking at potentially a $50 an hour, again, based on length of meeting. So even though the meeting is 3 hours, you're actually paying them a little bit more, based on the time that it's going to take to compile. So those were my initial thoughts. The board was relatively supportive in trying to put a policy forward. So I just wanted to get thoughts so we could try to put a draft together that works. So we will start with Mr. Dennington this time.
I think that idea makes sense.
Okay, on both fronts, Andrew, the permitting boards and executive
Yes.
and okay. Thank you. Let's go to Chelsea next.
I think it makes sense. I think it'd be nice if we were able to have all boards and committees that wanted a minute taker be able to have a minute taker, but where it's really not, especially this year, a good year to be introducing anything new. I think it makes sense to make it consistent. I think there's a lot of boards and committees that do a really good job of taking their own minutes. And obviously we appreciate everybody's volunteer time for boards and committees. Hopefully people will be okay with rotating around as needed to take minutes, as some are.
Thank you. Mr. Healy.
At least I'm in support of both of the tangents. I will say though that, and I don't know what the number is off the top of my, maybe it's prohibitive, but back in the day when John Wilson first appointed me to the personnel board, I think, I could be wrong, but I think every board and committee in town had a designated scrivener who was responsible for minutes. And obviously people on some of the smaller boards and non-permitting boards and things like that, they are terrific and they do a good job with the note taking. But I guess it's not an urgent request, but maybe I see Mr. Haggerty lurking out there in the attendee list. But maybe if we had an idea, excuse me, how many meetings there are every year total. And I think the way he keeps the records, we probably could get that number relatively quickly. Because honestly, if it's short or even medium money, I think it'd be a nice thing to be able to do for folks who are volunteering their time, to not have to burden them with both dealing with the substance of their committees and also being worried about taking notes. So I think your proposal is a good one, but I guess I'd like some additional information to see just how much additional money it would take so that all of our boards and committees didn't have to worry about. Sam mentioned the noise bylaw committee. They start off I think the first item on their agenda every time is to appoint a scrivener for the meeting, and that's fine and it's kind of funny and everything like that. But it'd be nice if that weren't the case. So sorry to be a little long-winded on it, but that's my thought.
No. Marty, that's fine. For 12 years, I took the minutes on open space. So I get it. And I understand. But again, it's just, I've had a lot of different boards and committees ask, well, why does some get it? And we don't have monies in our budget. We don't have a big enough budget able to sustain it. And I tried to do the average on 12 meetings a year. And, on average, based on the 150, it would be $1,800 a committee. And again, we could take a look at how many meetings there are, and again, the length would come in. My only goal in doing this was be able to start the discussion, so Vanessa and I could put something down on paper to bring back that the board can have a bigger discussion on. But in between, drafting something, and I'm thinking for this, probably it would be our January meeting, to have something. And Marty, I will get the information. I'll work with Jim to get that information as well. So that's it for that. We just wanted some form of direction. We have it. Thank you.
Do I
Next
get to
up, continue-
comment?
Oh my gosh, Sam, how did I forget you? Go right ahead, please.
I know.
Sorry.
You have 30 seconds.
When
I
I'm
could-
here, that's what screwed me up. Go ahead, Sam. Sorry.
I could feel the momentum passing me by there.
No, thank you. I appreciate it.
I'm on board in terms of the $50 per meeting hour kind of thing. I think that makes sense. But I'm actually substantially farther out on the Marty fringe on this one, in that I listen to a lot of meetings. I hear a huge amount of angst in terms of minute taking. And I think it's hard to get volunteers on a lot of these committees. And I think the minute taking is a substantial deterrent nowadays, given that the expectation is for more detailed minutes than ever used to be the case. I mean, and 5 years ago, minutes were typically exceedingly brief. And I think we're doing a much better job, which is worth something. So my theory is whatever we do, there are going to be people who are unhappy about it. And so you just got to, I think, make an executive decision on this stuff. And it seems to me we could come up with a list that is more expansive, I think, than you're thinking about, and is going to not include some committees, which is unfortunate, but we got budget limitations. So I'd be in favor of a more expansive list of committees that we provide minute takers for, and see how it works. And if it seems to be unreasonable after a while, then we can change it, certainly. But I think this is one thing that we could do to make people's time on committees more productive and more popular, if you will, in terms of support for committee work. So that's my 2 cents. Thanks.
Okay, Sam, so if you're thinking of any committees specifically, I would suggest if anybody wants to, outside of the permitting boards, the executive board being the Board of Selectmen and advisory, if you're thinking of any outside of those, anyone, if you could send them to Vanessa, not to me,
I'll take
send
a
them
look.
to Vanessa. So, then when I bring the document back, we have it, and,
Okay.
that will shorten the discussion as well.
Okay.
So it'll be more inclusive. So great. Okay. Thank you. Sorry about that.
Lisa, sorry,
Go ahead.
Lisa, you have a hand up.
Oh, perfect. Who do we have? Mr. Litt. Good
Well,
evening, Mr. Litt.
Good evening.
Welcome.
I thought I was going to go through a whole meeting without raising my hand. I maintain a database of all the minutes announcements that come out. So from January through December 7th this year, there are 589 of them. Now, a couple of those are going to be requests for minutes that are later satisfied, but that's the order of magnitude you're dealing with, over 500.
Mr. Litt, you're so efficient. Thank
So
you
that's-
so much.
No
And
extra
there's
charge.
$60,000.
So something to think about. Tim, much appreciated. Thank you very much. So again, we'll kind of look at that as well. So much appreciated. Okay, that being said, and Chelsea, thank you for being the barometer on raised hands. Much appreciated. Next up, continued discussion of adding a 5th full-time communications officer position. I think Chelsea has an update for us.
I do. Yes, thank you. So I had the opportunity to meet with Mr. Purple and Mr. Valentine related to some options for the 5th person dispatcher. And Mr. Purple was kind enough to reach out to labor councils to get some answers on the temporary position. And the answers that came back were not, they were not as clean as we were hoping as it relates to a full-timer fitting in with a unionized shop. So we went back to the drawing board. I sat with Chief Paulus to review some of the budget numbers, kind of got those massaged a little bit, and then came up with a proposal related to hiring a part-timer and giving as many hours as were available to the part-timer, understanding that it may trip under the SAP, it may trip the full-time benefits that are available based on the number of hours worked for subsequent weeks. And so Chief and I kind of went back and forth on that one. And at this point, given that he has his fourth full-timer filled and a part-timer kind of under training, he's going to stay the course on that until FY23 comes up. So I think his intent is to do a 5th dispatcher for FY23 and kind of continue to, plug and play on overtime and part-time for the rest of this fiscal year. So I just wanted to close the loop on that. And appreciate Labor Council's weighing in and the chief kind of sitting down with me and going through all his numbers.
Any questions for Chelsea on this? I mean, there's no action item for us tonight. I think when we look at budgets, go ahead, Andrew, sorry.
So the short summary is that this issue is going to go through the ordinary annual budget process rather than
Yes.
okay. I think that's good.
Yes. But I just wanted you to know kind of the options that were explored and what may or may not work.
Oops, sorry, Marty, any questions? Sam? Say I didn't forget you this time. Okay, thank you. All right, Chelsea, thank you very much. Next
welcome.
item is discussion of warrant article to change the date of annual town meeting. So I just put this on. I want to be clear that Kristen LaVault had reached out to me. She was the spearheader of the article to change town meeting to a Saturday to be more inclusive. So she did reach out to me, and there was nothing in the packet, and she didn't know, what the board was looking for. And I did explain to her that the board wasn't even aware that I was putting this on the agenda. I was just wanted to explore whether the board had any interest in taking a look at how we could still be respectful of the town meeting vote, and kind of what spearheaded this for me was they're just finishing up the budgets now with the departments, the committees, the commissions and whatnot. And we're meeting with advisory next week on Tuesday on the 14th. And with holidays and everything, we're really not going to be delving into budgets realistically until pretty close to January. So we basically have 6 weeks before the warrant is printed. So I was concerned, and again, I shared these same thoughts with Kristen. I was just concerned that, in March, we don't necessarily have the state aid numbers or the school numbers, and that we're basically working on assumption. And the goal is to have a better picture to be able to make better decisions. So, and again, I explained to her this was just to explore if the board was even open, and that we would, obviously, my goal was obviously to be respectful to the changes that town meeting made and the parents wanting the opportunity to attend and be represented. And I'm hopeful that if this board wishes to explore, we could, Kristen could be involved in that process, in those discussions as well, that we could find something that would fit everybody. Potentially you have the opportunity to do something like we do for Southborough Unscheduled. I think that town meeting is importance and participation. The option could maybe be to not schedule sports or sports on the fields those days, to allow the parents the opportunity. Again, I'm not saying what it should be or shouldn't be. I just, again, have concerns that, especially this year, when we know what we're going into and having the 6 weeks, I just wondered if there was a different way that could still meet the goals of, what town meeting had wanted before, and to give a little bit of additional time. So I will leave it at that. I just, again, looking to see if the board is even interested in exploring this in any way. I will just share those concerns. So we'll just go around. Chelsea?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's, having town meeting so early makes it extremely challenging. I think the biggest unknown, though, isn't known until the assessor does his work, which we know isn't, regardless of when we had town meeting, we won't know that. But without having the state aid numbers, without having the Algonquin split maybe until January, it does really create a tight timeline for advisory to do their work and for us to make the best proposal to town meeting that we can. So I would be open to exploring other options. Obviously, I completely understand the March date because it's more convenient for families. It's in between sports seasons. I totally understand that too. I mean, I'm getting into that now, right? And having two of us in the house who are pretty involved in town government, it does make it difficult when you're already outnumbered to make things work. So I definitely would be open to, collaborating with figuring out what is the best, for the most people that we can get to town meeting. Obviously, I would love to have more people to participate in town meeting than what we do today. I think it's extremely important. And I want everybody to have a voice and be able to attend. So I understand the challenges on both sides, and I definitely would want to work towards, being able to present, do our job and have advisory be able to do their job with the timeline. So I'm open to it.
Thank you. Mr. Haley.
Yeah, I'm open to any discussion. One interesting discussion that I stumbled across was, I think it was the advisory committee meeting right after town meeting, and Kathy Cook went around, and I think for a number of reasons, not the least of which is there were a number of new people on advisory, and she asked them what their impressions were. A number of the younger people on advisory, and it's great that there are that the younger people have sort of stepped up and are serving in those capacities, expressed interest in exploring ways that are consistent with what Chelsea just said, and Lisa, what you're talking about, and that is increasing. We've always talked about this, increasing participation in town meeting, but also from maybe potentially, and I know there's Mr. Haggerty still out there, the possibility of exploring an ability to participate in town meeting electronically. So I think it is, yeah, I'd like to explore whether or not March, with some experience now, is still the preferred date. We had a November evening town meeting and we had pretty good attendance, relative to what we get at annual town meeting. Is there, and are other towns exploring, and is it even legal, or would we need some sort of special dispensation from the legislature to explore the possibility of some sort of electronic signature and electronic participation in town meeting? I think all of those things should be on the table. I don't think it's going to be resolved by this March, but I think all of those things deserve to be on the table to do, I think, what all of us want to do, which is to, people complain that 200 people make a decision for a town of 10,000. Yeah, but those are the 200 people who show up at town meeting. If we can increase that number to 300, 500, whatever, through some other mechanisms, I think that's only a plus. So those are my thoughts. Yes, explore as many avenues as possible to make sure we get it as right as we can.
Yeah, and again, I obviously town meeting in March of this year, any discussions on this wouldn't affect that in any way anyway. And I don't know if the exploration would even encompass something to be ready for an annual town meeting. I just think there's a lot of things to explore. So, sorry, Mr. Stivers.
Thanks. I echo Marty's and Chelsea's comments. I think my goal has always been to get attendance as high as possible. And I will say that I've heard as many complaints about the evening meetings as I have about the Saturday meetings. So there's no perfect answer that people are going to be happy with, unfortunately. And it's not clear to me. I haven't seen any data that suggests we do better in the evenings versus Saturdays or vice versa. It's not clear to me what we can do to improve attendance, but I'm certainly open to any of the possibilities. I think there are towns that are using the electronic stuff for representative town meetings, but I don't know of any that are out there for open town meetings. But that would certainly be an interesting thing to do. And again, Mr. Haggerty, I'm sure, has more info about that. But again, anything we can do to increase attendance is great. Just not clear to me what that would be at this point. So without a specific idea and some data behind it, I guess I'm not eager to change for change's sake unless we have great confidence it's going to produce the desired result. So that's it. Thanks.
Great. Thank you, Sam. Andrew?
I'm also open to this, but just kind of separating out the issue you raised into a couple different issues about the broader effort to try to increase the number of people showing up and voting at town meeting. I think that's a huge issue, which I don't know if we can take care of between now and March, but in terms of moving the dates, I'm definitely open to that, because one thing which really struck me was Mark's email about starting to gather placeholder articles for the warrant, and the deadline would be January 4th. That is really coming up pretty fast. There's kind of takes a little bit of time for ideas to percolate and to get them in shape. So that's why I think that a later date is worth exploring. And then also for all the budget reasons that everyone else mentioned, we'll be in a position to make a better decision if we make it later rather than at that March date. So Lisa, are you really thinking about like moving off of the Saturday to a different date, or just moving from March to a different date TBD?
So I don't think moving off of it, again, I'm just exploring things. I don't have anything set in my head on this, Andrew, but I don't know that we have enough data on a Saturday, as Sam said as well, to determine if, that's the best day or not. I think for me, it was more concern on the March date and the restrictions and again, the budget seasons are so tight lately in trying to get things done. So I would be happy. I know Kristen is in the audience. I would be happy to, again, have a conversation with Kristen, kind of throw around some ideas and then, come back and, again, this isn't something that's going to be resolved in 1, 2, 3, 4, who knows how many meetings, but I think I'd like to actually have a sit down conversation with Kristen and get her thoughts on this as well. I mean, yes, Marty, go ahead.
Yeah, Lisa, one, I've got a little bit of an advantage on at least Chelsea and Andrew in that, my kids already went through the youth sport ringer and, they play pretty much every sport imaginable. And Kristen, this maybe is part of your discussion with Kristen. My memory is that most of those Saturday sports offerings were done by late morning, early afternoon. And so that's possibly something to take into consideration, just starting the meeting, if we're going to push it later. Again, that's my memory of again, what the youth sports were like. It's now, 6 to 10 years ago, but that you were usually done by late morning, early afternoon. There's not a late Saturday afternoon menu of games, at least that, again, in the dark ages, when my kids were the age of playing, that was the scheduling. Maybe it's changed. But that's one thing, another thing to put on the plate of consideration.
Okay. And Marty, and kind of adding on that, if that does appear to be the case, maybe I brought this up a few times, maybe we consider doing, a spring and a fall town meeting and you break things out and somebody's not sitting there. I think that's a big concern for people. And I've heard it from a lot of people that it's a long day to go on a Saturday and start at 10 and, be there really late. So, I mean, I think again, it's all part of exploring, options to be able to, to bring back is, maybe that's part of the solution as well. You do specifically budgets and you do zoning and other specific articles in the fall. So again, something else to consider, but I will have a conversation with Kristen, to at least start the conversation going. So I'll take care of that in the next day or two. So Kristen, I know you're out there and, I look forward to talking to you. So, okay, that was that piece. Next up is discussion of timeline for a Centennial committee. Mr. Healy, this was, I believe, on your goal. So the reason for putting this on there is we haven't really done anything on it. I know Vanessa's looked at a couple towns as to, what some other committees have done. And I just wondered if someone, maybe Mr. Healy would be interested in working with Vanessa and Marty, if you're busy, I get it, but just to put something together to bring back to the board as far as, for discussion, some type of charge or, we're going to be there before we know it.
No, I'm happy to do it. And the first thing I'm going to do is call it the Tricentennial Committee. But no, I'm happy to do it. And again, we're sitting here in almost 2022, and the clock is ticking towards. It's only 5 years away now. So I'm happy to sit down with Vanessa and figure out maybe a timeline, maybe a structure, et cetera, for putting together a formula for putting this in process. So happy to do it.
Yeah, no, I just figured, Vanessa had brought this up and she thought, we haven't done anything yet. And before we know it, it's something else is going to step in its path. So that would be great, Marty, if you could work with her. Like I said, she's already pulled a couple other towns, what they did, as well. So,
Yep.
and I think she said, actually, Vanessa, you're here. Hi, Vanessa. Thank you. I know one of the things you had said is some committees were already putting together like fundraising and, different things. So I'll just give you a second and, you can kind of share some of
I
the.
think probably the most timely thing is to decide if the board wants to put a warrant article on this year, just to start, throwing a little bit of money towards that. I know we've talked a lot lately about this isn't the year to add things, but to Mr. Hewley's point, the time is passing quickly. So I think we need to figure out what kind of funding the town would provide versus what kind of fundraising from private entities should be included. So, but I do have a couple of committee charges, so I can shoot those over to you, Marty, and then we can talk offline about when to bring a proposal back to the board.
I do have a question for Marty. Is this 2 words or are we hyphenated?
That'll be part of the research.
Good. Customer survey.
All right, awesome. Vanessa, thank you. And thank you, Marty,
Sure.
for taking care of this. Okay, next is discussion of draft charge for St. Mark's Street Park Working Group. Andrew, I know you put something together, so I will hand this off to you.
Well, thank you. So I put together a 1-page draft of a charge for the working group to look into options for the St. Mark Street Park. And I know everyone was hoping to have a shorter meeting, but I am interested in getting as much feedback on this draft as possible from as many of you as are willing to share your thoughts with me. My thought process here, first off, I thought there was a consensus at our last meeting that we should have a working group to consider ways of having some filling the currently unfilled circular space in the middle of the park where the playground was going to be, with some type of a marker or a monument or plaque, statue that would honor Native American history. And I drafted kind of the first paragraph to really just focus on, this group would really just focus on filling in the content for that circular space, which I understand it's actually about a 50-foot radius. Hopefully I put an asterisk on that because I'm not exactly sure of the number, but that's what I had heard. So I think it's a pretty interesting assignment. I had thought about, what are the ideal numbers to have, 5, 7, 9, and I thought 7 was a good one. So my proposal is to have 1 member of the select board, 1 member of the library board of trustees, the thinking there that the library is right next door, 1 member of the historical commission, because I think the historical commission has obviously a lot of value to add. A member of the Southborough Cultural Arts Council. I also put 1 member of the planning board or the community preservation committee, and then 2 at-large members. The rest of the language here, it kind of follows to some extent the ARPA charge that Mark had put together. Jim Haggerty, who I think is here, had a suggestion, the part of the charge where I said that all records of the working group will be filed with the town clerk. He suggested that instead should be filed with the select board, and that the working group's agendas, minutes would be then filed with the town clerk. I definitely want to hear from everyone about, at the last sentence, I said that the working group would deliver a recommendation to the select board not later than April 15th. That's certainly a date that do people think it should be later than that? I think it's going to be, even if we approve this tonight, which I don't know where people are on that, if you want to do it tonight or tomorrow, we still need to fill the at-large positions and then start meeting. So with that, that's kind of an overview of my thought process in putting this together. Oh, two other things I'll just briefly. I thought it made sense to have this relatively informal, so it doesn't even say that the working group will elect a chair and a vice chair. I don't even know if we need to do those things, but certainly looking for other people's thoughts on that. And then going back to my first point about narrowly defining is that circular space, filling that circular space in the middle. I thought of that because I think that otherwise the plan of the winding walkways is something that, in my point of view, doesn't need to be reconsidered. And also that the planting arrangements is not something that really would be within the purview of this working group. I know open space is already has had some discussions with the DPW about that. So it's really just about, thinking about what should be in the center of this park. Though the challenge here is I know everyone wanted a short meeting, but I'm very interested in what people think about this. So hopefully everyone will just tell me their thoughts.
All right, Andrew, thank you. Town business always takes precedent over a short meeting. As we know, I don't think this will be a 5-hour meeting, Andrew, so I think we're good. So thank you for putting this together. Thank you. I know that you had, good discussions with Jim on this as well. I know one of the things that I find appealing about the park is that it's going to be ADA compliant. And I think it creates tremendous opportunities with the library to be able to be inclusive, to those that may not be able to get on the lawn for some of the story times and whatnot. I think this creates an amazing avenue for ADA compliance as well as Andrew. I think it creates within the circle itself, it creates a huge educational tool that I think everybody can benefit from. So I think this is great, Andrew. I thank you for stepping forward and putting this together. I'll open it up for thoughts from everybody else. I don't know where I left off, so I think it was Marty.
Andrew, very good idea. The charge, I think makes an awful lot of sense, and I agree with you that the focus should be on the where originally there had been discussion about the playground going. And is now sort of an open space that is undefined, but should be defined. Here's one, my biggest thought is on the composition of the committee. And thinking about it was driven by a couple of things. Number one, I've watched several of the noise bylaw working groups, whatever it was called, committee meetings. And a number of things struck me about those meetings, not the least of which is it's not that they're faces I don't recognize, but they're faces I don't recognize from town government meetings. And that I find that incredibly refreshing. And I looked back, and the working group for Main Street did not have members, specifically designated members of boards and committees on it. It was, and you could be on a board and committee and put in to be on the working group, but it was not defined that this is what we, the Board of Selectmen, think makes sense for this working group. Someone from column A, somebody from column B, somebody from column C. It was put out for people who are interested in exploring and putting in the work to look at Main Street. And again, I think the noise bylaw group is done impressive work so far, and hopefully we get a great product out of them. I think there's pretty general agreement that the Main Street Working Group did very good work and in service of the town and helped a project that was flailing in a lot of respects to come to a very good fruition. And then the next one I looked at is another board and committee that has gotten, huge plaudits, and that was the public safety. And so I looked at the charge for public safety, and that also was not committee driven. It was 8 at large and one, I'm not quite sure how this happened, 1 advisory committee member. So my preference would be that we make it, I don't care what the number is, 5 or 7, but
all at large.
All at large. And it can be, if you could be on a board and committee and express your interest, but it'd give us an opportunity to explore why people are interested, rather than at the front end saying, we think this is what makes sense. Let's open it up. And it's got the added benefit of perhaps getting folks who have not had the time, inclination, whatever, to be involved in town decision-making, town government, to possibly think about doing it here. Again, those are three good examples, I think: noise, Main Street, and public safety, that were for the most part at-large appointments, and all three of those groups have functioned terrifically. So that is my overall comment on it.
Well, then, can I have a follow-up question? What do you think about the return, for lack of a better term, the return date of, the April 15? I mean, part of the thinking there was that spring is when the work to complete the rest of this is going to kick off again. But I don't know if whether it's too ambitious to say we're going to have a process, we're going to get some public feedback and really come back and have a decision made or get even a recommendation by April 15th. Should you have more time?
I honestly, I'd build in some flexibility. I mean, we might get surprised, and again, I'm right now. I mean, I'm looking back the working group, the Main Street working group. We met twice a week for a couple of months because it was interesting, it was important, and we were driven. The noise bylaw people are meeting, an incredibly ambitious schedule. If it's important, if people are motivated, maybe they do meet an April 15th date, even though it seems ambitious. But if they don't, then there's flexibility built in. It's not, we don't turn to stone if it doesn't happen by April 15th. So I think that's a reason. It's ambitious. There's no question about it. But as long as it's clear that there's flexibility, I'm fine keeping that in.
All right, Sam.
Thanks, and thanks, Andrew, for taking this on. I think this is an important thing, and it sounds like we're headed in a good direction with it. A couple of small things. One, I'm in favor of specifying in the charge that they'll select a chair and a vice chair and a secretary. Just organizationally, I think that makes it simpler. Second, you have language in here talking about 3 meetings in a public setting. I would make that a little more pointed to say 3 meetings at which public comment is solicited and permitted, just to be sure that we are going for the public comment here. And then I also agree with Marty that I guess I was headed toward less comfort with a specific member of the select board being on the committee, because ultimately we're going to, I guess, have the authority to make a decision about what happens here. And second, I think that it's, again, important to try to get as wide a selection of possible candidates as possible. I think if we had no requirements for specific boards, would certainly have the flexibility to make sure. I think it's important, for example, to have somebody representing the library's interests here, particularly the Historical Commission, et cetera. And we can certainly do that without a specific requirement for one. So I guess my first thought was to cut back on 1 or 2 of the designees and leave more flexibility and have at least a possibility of more public at large members in the process. But again, if we didn't have any requirements of committee membership here, we could certainly do that as we do an appointment process. So I'm pretty flexible on that one. I like having the April 15th date in as a target date, not a binding date. I think, again, there's value in doing this as quickly as possible. And I think, given experience we've seen with other committees, I think there's a focus to get things done in a timely manner. So I think that may take care of itself, but it doesn't hurt to have a target date in there. So that's my feedback at this point. Thank you.
Thank you, Sam. Chelsea.
Thanks, Andrew, for putting this together. On the April 15th date, did you talk to Karen about that date?
Yep, but in just kind of a very kind of general sense. We talked about the fact that, work is beginning. She wants to get people back there working there even as early as, March if possible. But I think it may be too ambitious to think that this working group could finalize a recommendation. The select board would consider it to actually have construction filled in start by April 15th.
Yeah. Okay. That's fine. I just wanted to make sure you had the conversation with her. In terms of Sam's comment for the three meetings in a public setting, I would call it a public forum like we did for the noise committee, because I think that implies that you're soliciting public feedback, resident feedback. And I agree with Marty's suggestion on the at-large, because as I was sitting here, I know you mentioned open space and that they're kind of on the peripheral of the center space, but is there any, I just wouldn't want to exclude a board or committee who really has an interest in, the center part as well. I know Lisa mentioned ADA, and that it is ADA compliant, but I want to make sure that we don't trip anything to be non-ADA, to not be ADA compliant by adding anything. So, I do, I'm kind of struggling with making sure that if we identify certain boards and committees that we're not purposely excluding anybody. So I actually think that the at-large maybe is a better route to go, and really put it out, make sure all the boards and committees are aware of it, and whoever's really interested in it can put their name forward.
Okay, is that it, Chelsea?
That's it for me.
Okay, so I have a couple things, Andrew. So I think I agree with the at-large as well, Marty, but I think it's important. Unfortunately, Sam, I disagree with you. I think it's important that a select board member be on there as well as a trustee and the historical. I would be fine with those three. I don't know that necessarily excludes anybody and changing it to 4 at large. I think, Andrew, you've done a ton of work to put this together, and I think you would be a great representative from the board on this. So we'll go back and we'll see what everybody thinks on that. My only real question is, if we're really looking to do something there and we're kind of on a time frame, we need to at least come up with, whether it be a placeholder, I think, for town meeting, whether we're going to talk to CPC and see if we could, do something for town meeting. I don't want to lose that window that we come up with a great plan, but we can't fund it. So, and I think this falls within the window potentially of CPC. I think it's worthy of a conversation, Andrew. So that would be one of my concerns. So I think if we can take something away with here tonight, Andrew, I think if we could agree to the membership to some level for you, I think, I have chair, vice chair, secretary, that's fine. I don't really have a strong opinion one way or another on that. Happy to add that if that's an issue. I think the forum piece is fine. You've already checked with Karen. So I think April 15th. So I think realistically, to get you potentially started and get this motivated, if we could just go around one final time and get people's thoughts on the 7 members. I mean, I think, again, I'll give you mine and we'll see where everybody ends up. I think select board, library trustees, because I think they're going to play an important role in the programming. And I think historical, where we're looking to do something historic, with the monument there. And then I would go with 4 at large. And again, anybody from planning board or the arts council can certainly apply if they wanted to. That's my 2 cents. We'll go around one more time and see if we can reach some form of consensus, maybe. Marty?
I go all at large and encourage folks from historical and library and open space and the community at large and put together the best committee we could, rather than, I think ARPA is different because it's so enmeshed in financial decisions for the town. This feels different. And as I said, I went back and I looked at 2 we know were incredibly successful committees, and one that appears to be on the road to being successful, the noise bylaw. And, you could have made an argument for any number of different committee members to be part of the makeup of those committees. And the Board of Selectmen in those junctures, including us for the noise bylaw committee, made a decision to trust the at-large process. And that's where I am. I don't think your proposal is unreasonable, but mine, I'm more comfortable with everybody being at large.
Okay, Sam, where do you stand?
in the middle, of course. I guess I feel most strongly that probably shouldn't be a select board member there, since we're going to make the ultimate decision on it. I would have every intent to appoint a member representative from the library and historical. I think those are very important. So I wouldn't object to having that specified as a requirement, and everybody else being at large. So, again, I don't feel super strongly about any of this. So that's sort of where I stand.
Okay, and I'll come back to you, Andrew. Chelsea, are you falling on one of the three? Again, I'm interested to go with what the board thinks is best. So,
I mean, I would be okay with doing them all at large, and really, I mean, I would highly encourage library and historical to, if they have somebody who's really interested in it, I would definitely want them to put in for it. I don't feel super strongly one way or another, but I do think it gives the opportunity to, for more people to apply. So I guess that's where I'm at.
okay, Andrew, where are you at?
Lisa, I like what you had proposed. I think that makes sense.
All right, so we're 2, 2, and 1. All right, so I guess
I'd go at large too. Then
okay, so Sam, you're all at large.
I would go all at large. So that's 3-2, right?
All right, so I have my preference, but I certainly will go. I don't feel strongly enough to hold this up, so I could certainly be swayed that way, Andrew.
Sure.
And if it
sounds
doesn't
like-
work, it was Sam's fault.
Yeah, that's right.
Absolutely.
I'm used
He
to
was like
that.
the type-
Everything else is, so no problem.
So if you like, I can just turn around another draft of this and then put this on the agenda for
14th.
next week. Okay.
Okay,
So
so one. Sorry, Chelsea, go ahead.
Sorry, there's just a hand raised whenever we're done
Okay.
deliberating.
Perfect. We'll go there next. Chair, vice chair, recording secretary, whatever.
I would.
Anybody? No one has a strong opinion. Okay, Andrew. So we'll put those in.
yeah,
And we're gonna get forum, and we're gonna whose responsibility is it going to be to talk to CPC? Marguerite, just 2 seconds. Obviously, we need to have a conversation with CPC. Marty, is that I'll
Yeah.
do it?
We got him.
There you go. And again,
We're
we
on a
don't have.
committee. I mean, it'll be, unless I start dodging the meetings, it's relatively easy for me to bring up.
Yeah, I just think, again, we don't know an amount. We're not going to know an amount till we get closer. But I think if they would agree to the concept and a placeholder, then, that would move us 2 steps closer to getting this done. So, okay. So Andrew, do you have what you need for the charge? We're going to bring Marguerite over. Vanessa, please. Marguerite, you're here. If you would just unmute, welcome again.
Yes, thank you. I am so excited. This is the most excited I've been about anything in about the last 2 years. This is going to be so wonderful. And the library is thrilled, and I can't begin to tell you. But I had 2 questions. One, are we involving anybody from St. Mark's in this process?
Andrew, do you want to address that?
the draft that I put together said, it didn't mandate, it just said the select board encourages the working group to invite a representative of the St. Mark's School and a representative of the DPW to participate as non-voting members.
Okay, all right. And then my other question was, are we consulting the NIPMUC people on this?
I had in mind that, the working group, once the people who are appointed, they would make that decision.
Not in other words, not to bring the person in as part of the committee, but to consult with them separately.
That whoever would be appointed to this, I think that whoever joins the group need to feel comfortable with whoever they decide to bring in or not bring in. I mean, I think it makes sense to me, but I think that it's something that I had thought about, and
Yeah.
I think that whoever joins the group need to feel comfortable with whoever they decide to bring in or not bring in. I mean, I think it makes sense to me, but I think that it's something that I had thought about, and, I think that thought not to include in the document with the thought that, you know, at one of the first meetings of the group, that's obviously one of the things that would naturally come up.
Okay, Marguerite, hold on one second. Marty wanted to add something. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I guess Marguerite, I hadn't thought about this, but the notion of St. Mark's is I think potentially really interesting because, you know, they're a high school with, among other things, history teachers. And I mean, I think that, you know, as part of this process, however we're going to reach out to people, that we reach out to St. Mark's and you know, suggest that perhaps there's someone in their history department who would be interested in you know, tossing their hat in the ring to possibly be on the working group. And maybe we get not only somebody with a St. Mark's interest, but with somebody with a real historical bent who might be involved in the working group. So Marguerite, thanks for crystallizing that thought in my head, because I think it could be really again a real benefit to a working group to have somebody with that kind of background.
Oh, I think that's
So, and
a,
I think,
a wonderful
go ahead,
thought you
Marguerite,
had.
sorry.
Sorry.
Nope.
Go ahead, Lisa.
Nope, I was just going to say, so I think encouraging the working group, Marty, to invite a representative, I think is definitely, you know, the path, and it's in the charge, so. Okay, so Marguerite, you can, you know, figure out who you want from the library to apply when the charge goes out, and, you know, let the library have a voice at the table as well.
Oh, that's fabulous. We're very, very happy about this. It's going to be a wonderful thing. And thank you
All
for
right,
your work
awesome.
on it, Andrew. Yeah.
Awesome, Marguerite, thank you so much.
Okay,
All right, so
bye.
Andrew, you'll draft just an update to this, and we'll review it on the 14th. All right. That's that. Okay, next is, so I had sent out to members of the board, just for members of the public that are here. One of the things that's always nice at the end of the year to do is to be able to allow our departments, our committees and boards and commissions to share a few of their accomplishments. We're not going to read them all tonight. I have given members of the board each some of the sheets. It's all within the packet. I would hope the public would go and read it. And actually, Mr. Purple is going to post this on the town's website as well. I think it's a great opportunity for the citizens to be able to see some of the great work that's taken place during COVID and is taking place in the town. So I have kind of condensed, or asked the board to kind of condense what was sent to them, not to read necessarily everything, but just to kind of give some highlights from the different boards and committees. I tried to work it out based on liaisons. So I just thought we would go around, and again, I encourage the public to take a look at this document to see some of the truly good work that's going on by departments within the townhouse, as well as, you know, boards, committees, and commissions that again are volunteers that are doing fabulous work. So I thought we would just kind of go around the table. And let's see, I did that first. So Andrew, I think we'll start with you first. If you want to go through and just highlight some of the departments or boards or committees on your list.
Sure. So I'll briefly summarize some of the accomplishments that the Economic Development Committee, the Facilities Department, Historical Commission, and the Planning Board did this year. So as many of you know, one of the most ambitious things that you can try to do to bring to the town meeting is a zoning change, because of the 2/3 majority you need to get. They're very complicated. They involve lengthy public hearings, and both the EDC and the Planning Board spearheaded significant zoning changes. The Planning Board spearheaded the update to the outdoor illumination bylaw, which passed at the annual town meeting. And the EDC spearheaded the new downtown district zoning bylaw, which passed at the special town meeting in the fall. Those are both really outstanding accomplishments, and that represented a lot of hard work from people on those committees and boards. The EDC also assisted local businesses in awarding 12 grants worth $155,000 to Southborough small businesses, and created outdoor dining regulations to allow restaurants to operate at higher capacity due to COVID. The facilities department also helped prepare the town buildings for reintroduction of employees after the COVID shutdown. And many people may have noticed the recent improvements to the townhouse that were undertaken during COVID, both on the second floor and the lighting fixture upgrades. And the historical commission deserves a lot of credit for getting the town to a place where we're now pending final approval by the National Park Service for inclusion of Southborough Center's historic district in the National Register of Historic Places. And there's other things on the list, but that I could talk about, but I think that's the highlights.
Great, Andrew. Thank you. Much appreciated. Chelsea?
Okay, great. Thanks. So Senior Center, I think their biggest accomplishment was getting back up and running with all of their programs at a smaller scale, but at least they're running. They did an outreach program to all 75 plus seniors, and they continue to update data on those seniors to make sure that they can continue to keep in touch with them. I know that was a challenge when everything kind of shut down and they, didn't necessarily have updated information. So that's huge for them. And their caregiver meal program has begun the 6th year. So I actually got to participate in that a few weeks ago, and it's such a rewarding thing to do and such a benefit to the seniors that participate in that. Youth and Family Services, they actually had a pretty amazing year. They, as you know, they built up their programs over the last couple of years and, took a lot of feedback. They engaged in a strategic plan that, kind of figured out what is the best way to use the current resources that they have and how can they optimize the services that are provided to the residents. So I know that they're working through those objectives now. So that was a great undertaking that they had. They acquired the Interface Referral Service Program, which kind of changed their model for how they do bridge and gap services for town residents. And it actually allowed them to open up capacity to provide services to more residents, which is amazing, especially given the results that we're seeing from COVID from a mental health perspective. So they've definitely been able to help more residents than they ever had. And the suicide prevention training, that was a new initiative that was kicked off. I think last week was their first one, and their goal is to train 100 residents in that QPR suicide prevention training by next fall. So another benefit to the residents. The finance team, so they reconstituted their finance team group to effectively work to address budget and financial matters. They successfully trained and integrated a new part-time employee into the office to help kind of to take some pressure off of the current staff that were there. And they successfully pushed through several unexpected workflow events, COVID, unexpected leaves to continue normal operations. And finally, open space. So they kind of broke it out to their season. So in January and February, they had a seed distribution program that was very successful. They had a lot of volunteers and did over 700 packages of 26 varieties of native plants. In June, they had over 50 people attend a garden tour at the Bee Colony Research Garden at Breakneck Hill. And then spring and summer, they partnered with SOLF on a new pollination prevention garden at the Beals Preserve. So they had a very busy year as well. So congratulations to all of those departments.
Great. Thank you, Chelsea. Marty?
All right, first up, a police department. Chief Paul has identified their biggest accomplishment being reaccreditation for a 3-year period by the Mass Police Accreditation Commission. They first got that in 2018, and it's a big deal. Only 83 communities in Massachusetts, their police departments have that accreditation. And really, it's a testament to cutting edge in terms of community policing, in terms of addressing use of force issues, adequate resourcing in a variety of different areas. So kudos to Chief Paulus and the police department for that. And also we've welcomed them as well, a number of new police officers who have been seamlessly assimilated into the department. Shopsy Dorian identified that they completed their housing production plan. They got a $15,000 grant from MAPC to complete the plan. And I'll also, they didn't list this, but for those of us who were, extensively involved in the downtown zoning project, Shopsy was very instrumental in making sure that we kept our eye on the ball in terms of low income housing, not just in the downtown area, not just as part of the new zoning, but generally in Southborough. And I think they deserve an awful lot of credit for that. Next up, one of my favorites, the Trails Committee. And, not surprising, Catherine's list was extensive, but deservedly so. And they, in terms of outreach, their Facebook page is terrific. They were very instrumental in putting together the signatures that pushed the DCR to open up spaces and get in line with our public access plan for the various trails. And in line with that, they hosted a number of guided hikes. I think, Andrew, you talked about the fact that you went on one of them on a Saturday morning. The trail stewardship, in conjunction a number of times with the Boy Scouts, that has continued. And it's interesting. Catherine didn't punctuate it, but I will, because I walk those trails a lot. And it is pretty amazing, number one, how extensive the trail system is for a relatively small footprint that Southborough has, but also how well kept the trails are. And it's I walk them at different times of the day and nights and weekends, and I'm never alone. It really is remarkable how well kept they are, and how as a result how well used they are by the populace. And finally, trails were very successful in securing funding for a number of their initiatives. One of the most important is the extending of the trail over near the dam out towards Pine Hill. So again, trails list, it probably could have been even a couple of pages longer than it was, but again, it's a testament to the terrific work they do. And finally, the building department. It's not a mystery that 2021 was a crazy real estate year, and a big burden of the inspections and the like that have to be done fell on the building department, and they handled that very effectively. They also, and I didn't know this, but the Rhode Island, the station house fire back in the early 2000s, that spawned a fire act in Massachusetts that was implemented in 2004. And a big part of that were what they call 304 inspections. And that responsibility falls with the building department as well as some related departments. And, that's incredibly important. We don't have a station club type facility in Southborough, but we do have an awful lot of commercial entities that have foot traffic and the like. And these sort of inspections are critically important for maintaining the safety and preventing a recurrence of something that happened down in Rhode Island. And the building department did a very good job on that. Finally, we saw there were a number of issues that cropped up that we had to get involved with, involving building issues and the like. And just from my dealing with the building department directly on some of those, they are responsive and handle what oftentimes were very difficult, delicate issues with great aplomb. So kudos to them for that as well. So that's my four. Could have gone on for a little bit longer for all of them, but all four of those departments had years that the folks who pay their salaries, the taxpayers, should be proud of.
Wonderful. Thank you, Marty. Sam?
Thanks, Lisa. I guess I'd start with an editorial comment that this is a pretty impressive list taken as a whole. And I think much of it are things that the public is not necessarily generally aware of. It's also impressive that a lot of it happens with town department support, but a lot of it happens with volunteer committee support. And I'm always impressed at how much really outstanding work is done by many of the committees that don't have a lot of visibility. So I think we're blessed to have such strong resident participation in these kind of things, and a lot of very helpful stuff gets done. So I'll start with the Conservation Commission. Our conservation agent, Melissa Danza, got certified as an erosion sediment stormwater inspector, and a continuing education process increases the capabilities of the commission. And the commission also was able to finalize and gain approval of the open space and recreation plan. A lot of work there that creates opportunities for us to get grant funding. So a lot of good progress there. Cable Television Committee was able to get the renewal of our Comcast cable license, which is difficult. The cable TV world is very difficult to deal with, as folks have figured out generally, and the committee did a great job in terms of getting that done in terms that are generally favorable to the town. So great work there. Technology department and MTC support. We got completion of a fiber connection to DPW and the History Museum, now complete after a lot of work. We've improved security with two-factor authentication for employees for security purposes to give us more protection against cyber threats, ransomware, those kind of things. So ongoing process, but continue to make progress there, which is good news. ADA committee has made great progress in terms of repositioning itself now for town meeting vote recently as the Southborough Public Access Committee, which broadened their charge to beyond facilities to include things like information access and so forth, which is important. And we also they did a self-evaluation study to determine where we have shortcomings in our ADA accessibility, and working on a plan to close those gaps, which is again an ongoing process, but at least we've got a good roadmap now to work with. So great work there. Master Plan Committee continues to close in on finalizing the updated master plan. All the chapters are now being finalized, being reviewed by the committee as a prelude to going out to the public with more communication about it. And this has been done largely funded by volunteers on the committee. Last time in 2008, we had spent about 100 grand, I think, of consulting money. We've done much less consultant support, got a lot more internal support, which is great to carry the message to the individual committees on an ongoing basis versus having a consultant come in and do it, wind up a document on the shelf. We hope that this one's going to be operationalized going forward. And last but not least, Health Department has made great progress over the last year or so. Clearly a time of turmoil given the pandemic. There's been a substantial turnover in staff. Longtime board member Mary Lou Woodford retired. Paul Pasinski, as health agent, retired. And we've gotten great new support from Chelsea as a new member and now chair of the Board of Health. Dr. Medina is a new member there, doing great work, and new health agent Heather Alker, Dr. Alker, and Nurse Taylor West were thrown into the deep end of the pool here with the pandemic. The board and the department have come through in terms of support for COVID, 18 vaccination clinics, 1 flu clinic. While they're continuing to support the food and septic inspections. And we've launched the regionalization process with Westboro, Northborough, and Boylston to do combined support for certain inspection functions, which is a good step in terms of getting more bang for the buck in terms of public health resources. So great work there. And that's my list. So again, wonderful report, great number of things, good things happening here across a wide range of activities. And it's disappointing that the public is not aware of much of this. And I think hopefully this process will continue and make people more aware of this kind of work that goes on, that's being done in large part by their friends and neighbors in the community, which is a great asset for the town.
Great, Sam. Thank you. I'll pick up with the fire department. There was the retirement of Lieutenant Peltier after 34 years of service in September, the hiring of firefighter Lisa Thompson in November, the completion of the community-driven strategic plan to be presented to the town in January of 2022 in collaboration with area communities and Board of Health and regional COVID vaccination clinics, including providing paramedics and EMT vaccinators. The Recreation Department, some of the highlights from there were they held a revamped and successful summer camp that saw 552 individual children attend over the course of 8 weeks. Outstanding. Registration for summer 22 opens on February 1st. They successfully brought back community events such as Summer Nights, Heritage Day, and the Gobble Wobble, with the introduction of the new Trunk or Treat Halloween celebration to be continued for years to come. And after a vacancy that lasted all summer, the Recreation Department welcomed Joe Durant as the new program coordinator to the department. So kudos to them for helping bring back a little bit of normalcy during a crazy couple years. We have the library. There's a link that they supplied that details various projects that the library completed in 2021 regarding outdoor spaces, including an outdoor vegetable garden, a new native plant garden, a second frog dedication statue, a solar panel USB charging bench, and a story walk. And if anyone's interested in that, the link will be in the packet that's going to be posted online. There were various program entities and organizations thanked in the post from the Massachusetts library system. And the library was happy to continue to offer curbside pickup in early 2021 before reopening to the public on June 1st. The library was also very happy to make much needed historical restorations and necessary building repair to the roof as a result of the library facade restoration project made possible by the Southborough Community Preservation Committee. Last up is the Board of Select Board. I will correct myself. The development of a remote work policy has helped the town migrate towards meeting the demands of a pandemic workplace. Giving eligible employees a tool to work from home when the need arises has also served as a beneficial recruitment and retention asset. Town departments learned quickly this year how to enhance their resources and services by implementing a number of virtual programs and tools. On a lighter note, we are thrilled to see the staff in the Selectmen's office flourish with the promotion of Kate Barry to a full-time employee and the addition of Melanie Otsako, I always screw that up, sorry, as executive assistant. Both women have proved to be a perfect combination to help move us into the new year with strong skill set, energy for developing innovative resources and superior customer service. And lastly, as a highlight, 9 families were provided financial assistance through the rent and mortgage assistance program funded by CARES, which is a pretty amazing feat. I'm going to let Chelsea, if she wants to add anything to this, to know that there was the opportunity to help your neighbor is just an outstanding feat. And we should all certainly be proud of that. Chelsea, would you like to add anything to that? I know you spearheaded this.
Sure. So I just appreciate this board's support with running this program, understanding that we needed to use the trust as a backstop in case we needed it. I think it was a very humbling experience for me. And I definitely think that, you know, going into this budget season, that process will be in the back of my mind as we're kind of going through what the tax rate will look like for next year. So I think we're fortunate for the residents that we were able to offer that program.
Great. Thank you, Chelsea. So those are some of the highlights. I would encourage the public. As I said, we're going to post the full document online. It's already in the packet, but I think if the public takes the opportunity to celebrate a little bit as we did tonight, some of the amazing things that are taking place in this town. I will leave that and I will end that discussion with that. So thank you to everybody. And thank you for everyone that shared the accomplishments. Next up is the final public comment. Thank you for everyone that hung around. If you'd like to make a comment, please raise your hand. Okay. I see no one. Thank you for everyone for sticking around. At this point, the board will be entering into executive session for MGL Chapter 38, Section 21, and not returning to open session to comply with or act under the authority of any general or special law. Exemption 7, to review and approve the executive session minutes of November 3rd, 2021 and November 16th, 2021, and to discuss contract negotiations for the fire chief. Exemption 2, as the chair has determined that an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the town's position. Do we have a motion to enter into executive session?
So move.
Second.
Is there a second? Thank you. Roll call vote. Mr. Dennington,
Aye.
Mr. Healy,
Aye.
Mr. Stivers,
Aye.
Malinowski,
Aye.
and Ms. Braccio. Aye. Thank you. And we'll just wait. And Vanessa